I'm making blueberry pie today. It's a raw blueberry pie. And rather than make it in a pie plate that's round and has the edges that come up, I'm actually going to make it in a square pan because, first of all, it's easier to make, and secondly, it's easier to serve. So let's get started, and I'll show you how to make it. One of the important ingredients in this blueberry pie dessert is dried dates. And you need to get Medjool Dates. Don't get the Deglet Noir, which are in so many grocery stores. The Deglet Noir are way too dry. You're going to need these Medjool Dates, and if these are too dry, they won't work either. They need to be sticky and fairly soft. And we're going to start off preparing some of the dates for the filling, and we'll also be using dates in the crust. To prepare the dates for the filling, if the dates are fairly large, you're going to need 8. If they're on the small side, you'll need 9. And what you're going to do is break apart those 8 or 9 dates, pull out the pit, and put them in a bowl. And also, sometimes there's this little thing on the end on some of them. Not all of them have them. Some of them lost them in the process of being processed. But pull that off too. Put that in the bowl. And next, we're going to fill this bowl with water. After you fill the bowl with water so that the dates are covered, just let them sit on the kitchen counter. They need at least 30 minutes, but this is the first thing I do while I prepare the rest of the dessert. For the crust, we're going to need 1 cup of ground nuts. Now you can either use almonds or walnuts. Typically I prefer almonds in this dish, but I'm going to use a mixture of both. And if you want, when you're done grinding them, you can put them into a 1 cup measuring cup to make sure that you have enough. But usually before they're ground, I'll measure a little bit more than a cup. And I'm going to be using the food processor for this. So I'm going to put them in. The dog will not stop eating her meal. That's what you hear. She's been licking an empty bowl for the last half hour. Okay. So the important thing when grinding nuts for this is that you get them ground without them becoming nut butter. Oh, and it helps if you plug it in first. It always helps. And sometimes you can just stop it and look inside and make sure they're ground enough. I think this is going to be plenty. I might end up measuring this anyway. Okay, so I'm going to measure this out off camera and make sure that it's just a cup. Now I'm going to choose 5 dates for the crust, and I want the biggest, stickiest dates I can find. So sometimes the sticky ones are really shiny, but you can pick them up in your hand and decide, all right, this one's a good one. So break them in half, or even in 3 pieces. Take out the pit, and then have the little thing on the end. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Pull that off, and I just put them in a bowl because I'm away from my food processor, and now we're back to the food processor. Now I'm back to the food processor. I have my 1 cup of ground nuts in here. I have my 5 really sticky dates. And the last ingredient is 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And now I'm going to put that back in here. The idea is to get it so that all the dates are broken up. And I'm going to bring the camera in so you can see what this looks like. And you also want it to be really sticky in your hand. So if I take some of this out and I hold it together, I want it to, well, in big clumps anyway. I want it to stick together like this, not fall apart. So the dates are holding it together. Now we're ready to put this in the pan. Now I've dumped all of the filling into the pan, and then here's the piece that I'm just going to spread it out evenly first, and then I'm going to take a spatula and press it down. Sometimes I use my hands, but since I'm doing a videotape, I'll just use a spatula to do it. So this is a nice way to get it all pressed down. So if I was using a pie pan, instead of a square pan, I might need the same amount of, as long as it's a smaller pie pan, maybe an 8-inch, I might the same amount of crust that would go up the sides. But like I said, this is easier to make and easier to serve out of a square pan. So now we're ready to make the filling. Wait, I forgot one more thing. While this is setting, while we make the filling, I'm going to put this crust into the freezer for about 10 or 15 minutes. For this recipe, you'll need a total of 4 cups of blueberries. Now, I'm using fresh blueberries here. I'm not using frozen. I have used frozen before, but you'll see I have them split into two different piles. So I have about 1.5 cups here, which are going to go into the blender to make the saucy part of the filling. The rest of the blueberries are going to be just whole. So I prefer these to always be fresh. I've done these that are going into the blender, the 1.5 cups in frozen. If you use frozen, you need to let them thaw first, because you don't want to start off with them being frozen. So if you want, you can try the whole thing with frozen blueberries. I don't suggest it. Again, you can do these frozen, thaw them first. 1.5 cups are going into the blender. Then remember the dates that we're soaking in water. I drain them of the water and put them back in the bowl. So these are those 5 dates. And then I'm also going to be putting in 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. And off camera, I juiced a lemon. So now I'm going to blend them in the blender. I want you to see how long this takes, and I'm going to be scraping it down in between too, because you notice there isn't any water in here. All the water is going to come from the fruit. All right, I'm going to scrape this down. And I want to do it with the open. I'm too short to open it. All right, I need to take it down and open it. I want to show you the inside and show you what this. Actually, it looks pretty good. Let me get it in front of the camera. Okay, you know what? It blended up really well. Part of it is because the dates were really good, juicy dates, and they were probably in there for about a half hour in the water. And no, this is ready to go. So I don't need to blend this anymore. I'm looking for pieces of dates or, you know, anything that's not liquidy. And now I'm going to pour this into a larger bowl. The issue with pouring this out is that so much gets stuck, and not stuck, but it's so thick, even though it looks liquidy, it's sitting in the bottom of the blender. So I'm using a rubber spatula to get out as much as I can, scooping it out, shaking it out. So those of you who are newer to doing things like this is the tricky part. You don't want to leave any of this good stuff in the blender and have it wash down the drain. So if you have a more slender rubber or silicone spatula, that would be helpful too. And then after you get as much out as you want, now I'm going to put in 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon and the rest of the blueberries. And then I'm going to stir it up with the spoon. Yum. This is so good. It's reminding me of summer. And I'm doing this in February on a day when it's like 12 degrees Fahrenheit outside. All right, so now it's ready to pour into the crust. I'm going to get the crust out of the freezer. Now I'm just going to pour this in. Let's see if I can do it without blocking your view. And of course, I want to get as much of that out as possible. So I'm going back to my, sorry, I'm right-handed, I'm left-handed. I don't know what handed I am. Let's see. To get as much of this out as possible. So now, in order to not block your view, I'm having to do it left-handed. Alrighty then. Alrighty then is old. And spread it out. Gosh, how easy is this? And now I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap. So these blueberries are really big. You can use blueberries that are not so big in this dish if you want. Now that it's covered with plastic wrap, I'm going to put it in the refrigerator. I suggest refrigerating it for at least 2 to 4 hours or even overnight. I'm ready to cut this. I think it was in the refrigerator for about 4 or 5 hours. So here we go. Of course, the first piece is always the hardest to get out of the pan as I kick the tripod. Let's see. It kind of depends on the width of the spatula. So let's hope it comes out okay. And it did. This is a lot of blueberries, but that's good. It's delicious. It's a really refreshing pie, quote unquote. And you see how easy it is to cut from a square pan versus if it was in a pie plate with the edges. This is just an easier way to serve it. I like it. If you end up trying it and you make it in a pie plate, pie pan, let me know in the comments how it sliced and how it lifted out and if it stayed together, if the crust stayed together. But if it falls apart or if it's kind of hard to make the crust in a pie plate, make it in a square pan.